What if everything you've ever been told about life, morality, and the meaning of existence was wrong? What if the traditional values you've been taught to uphold, love, family, duty, and religion, were merely comforting illusions designed to suppress the truth about who we are as human beings? What if the key to unlocking your fullest potential is not in embracing these values, but in shattering them entirely? These are the kinds of questions Friedrich Nietzsche dared to ask, and his answers were anything but comforting. In fact, Nietzsche's philosophy has been described as the ultimate existential rebellion, a call to arms against the conventional world order, against the comfortable lines we tell ourselves to avoid confronting the true nature of life. Nietzsche didn't just predict the collapse of traditional values, he welcomed it. And he did so because he believed this collapse was our only path to freedom. Today, Nietzsche's name evokes controversy, confusion, and sometimes even disdain. But the truth is, Nietzsche was more right about the world we live in today than almost anyone else from his time. His insight into the collapse of religion and the search for meaning in a godless world and the role of individual power in shaping reality rings clearer with every passing decade. In this video, we're going to explore why Nietzsche was right about everything, why his most radical ideas are not just theoretical but incredibly relevant today. Whether or not you agree with his conclusions, Nietzsche's philosophy forces us to confront uncomfortable truths and to re-examine the very fabric of our existence. Chapter 1. Nietzsche's Context and Life. To understand Nietzsche's ideas, we first need to understand the world he was responding to. Nietzsche was born in 1844 at a time when Europe was undergoing seismic changes. The Industrial Revolution was sweeping across the continent. Technology and science were making leaps that were challenging long-held truths, and religious belief was beginning to show signs of erosion under the weight of reason and scientific discovery. Raised in a strict Lutheran household, Nietzsche's early life was steeped in religious dogma. However, tragedy struck early when he lost both his father and his younger brother, a loss that would later leave him with a deep sense of existential questioning. Nietzsche saw the church both as a refuge and a prison, offering comfort, but also stifling human potential by emphasizing submission, suffering, and obedience. It was this clash between the oppressive forces of faith and the liberating potential of individual strength that would shape much of this later work. Nietzsche's academic career, though promising, was short-lived. His health deteriorated, forcing him to retire early, but it was during this period of solitude that Nietzsche began to craft the ideas that would later revolutionize philosophy. It was not in the comfortable halls of academia, but in isolation that Nietzsche confronted what he called the problem of existence, in a way no philosopher had before him. Chapter 2. The Death of God. One of Nietzsche's most famous and most misunderstood concepts is the death of God. But what does it mean? Nietzsche wasn't announcing the literal death of a divine being. Instead, he was describing the cultural death of the God-centered worldview that had shaped Western civilization for over 2 millennia. The Enlightenment had already begun undermining religious explanations of the world by replacing them with rational and scientific ones. With the rise of reason, human beings no longer needed God to explain the movements of the stars or the mysteries of life on Earth. Scientific discoveries, such as those made by Copernicus, Darwin, and Newton, had fundamentally altered the way humanity understood the universe, leaving religious belief increasingly irrelevant to explaining the world around us. Nietzsche's declaration that God is dead wasn't just a commentary on the decline of religious faith, it was an acknowledgement of the profound crisis that followed. As people moved away from religious belief, they were left without a moral center, without a clear understanding of what gave life meaning. This absence of a guiding moral compass left many vulnerable to nihilism, the belief that life has no inherent meaning or purpose. In Nietzsche's view, this nihilistic vacuum was a direct result of the erosion of traditional religious and moral frameworks. The death of God left a void that many people attempted to fill with superficial distractions, materialism, consumerism, and the pursuit of fleeting pleasures. Nietzsche recognized that without a higher moral authority, many would struggle to find meaning and would be left to grapple with feelings of emptiness, confusion, and despair. Today, we can see the consequences of this cultural shift. In a world where religious faith is no longer the unifying force it once was, many individuals find themselves questioning their purpose and place in society. Nietzsche's warning was not just philosophical, it was prophetic. We live in a world where the absence of traditional values has led to a growing sense of disillusionment and existential crisis. Chapter 3. The Will to Power. If the death of God leaves us without a moral compass, what then? Nietzsche's answer was the will to power. This concept, often misunderstood as a simple desire for domination, actually represents the fundamental force of life itself. The drive not to just survive, but to thrive, to grow, to overcome, and to create meaning in a world that offers none inherently. The will to power is more than just a desire to gain control over others. It is an inner drive to expand one's influence, to shape the world around you according to your own values, and to overcome obstacles in your path. For Nietzsche, this was the essential force of human life, a life-affirming drive that compels individuals to just not accept the world as it is, but to actively transform it. This idea challenges us to reconsider our place in the world. Rather than just passively accepting the values imposed upon us by society, we are invited to challenge and redefine them. It's not just about gaining power over others, it's about developing power over yourself, your limitations, and your circumstances. The true exercise of the will to power is the act of self-overcoming, of constantly striving to push past what you thought was possible and to redefine your own limits. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power also ties into his rejection of traditional morality. He saw conventional moral systems, particularly those rooted in religion, as forms of weakness, systems designed to suppress the individual's natural drive for growth and self-expression. For Nietzsche, true strength came from embracing life in all its chaotic, unpredictable glory and forging your own path. Consider how this idea plays out in the lives of the greatest creators and innovators throughout history. People who achieve greatness, whether in art, science, or business, embody the will to power in its truest form. It's the force that drives us to break boundaries, to reshape our world, and to create something entirely new. Chapter 4. The Übermensch, Superman. Next comes one of Nietzsche's most famous and often misunderstood ideas, the Übermensch, or Superman. And thus spoke Zarathustra. Nietzsche introduces the Übermensch as the ideal figure who transcends conventional morality and creates their own values. The Übermensch is not about physical superiority or a mythic Superman strength. It represents an individual who has gone beyond the constraints of social norms, a person who lives authentically, creating meaning in a world that offers none by default. The Übermensch is a figure who rejects the moral frameworks that society imposes on them and instead forges their own values and ideals. It is a person who does not bow to tradition or conventional wisdom, but instead becomes the architect of their own destiny. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch is about rejecting mediocrity and striving for greatness, not in comparison to others, but in comparison to one's own potential. The Übermensch lives beyond the dichotomy of good and evil. They recognize the fluidity of moral values and create new standards based on their experiences and their unique perspective on the world. The idea of the Übermensch is not something that should be viewed as unattainable. In fact, Nietzsche believed that we all have the potential to become Übermensch-like figures, though it requires tremendous effort, self-discipline, and the will to face life head-on without flinching. It is the pursuit of becoming more than what society tells you to be. Chapter 5. Eternal Recurrence. Nietzsche's philosophy doesn't end with the will to power or the Übermensch. One of his most profound ideas is the concept of eternal recurrence. Imagine for a moment that you had to live your life over and over again for eternity, exactly as you would have lived it. Every joy, every heartbreak, every moment of triumph, every sorrow, all of it would repeat endlessly. This thought experiment is designed to force us to confront the choices we make every day. Nietzsche challenges us to live as though we would relive each moment of our lives for all eternity. Would we live differently if we knew that every action, every word, every decision would be repeated forever? but we take more responsibility for how we live, knowing that our choices would echo through eternity? Eternal recurrence isn't meant to be a metaphysical assertion about the structure of the universe. It's a challenge to how we live our lives. It forces us to evaluate whether we are living in a way that we would be proud to repeat forever. If we cannot embrace our lives with joy and fulfillment, then we have failed to truly live. Eternal recurrence asks us to embody every moment with such intensity and meaning that we would embrace its repetition without regret. Chapter 6. Nietzsche's Relevance Today. Nietzsche's philosophy is more relevant today than ever before. We live in a world where traditional values are in decline. Religion no longer holds the sway it once did, and many people are left to grapple with an existential void that Nietzsche warned about. The feeling that life is meaningless in the absence of divine order. We are bombarded with distractions, consumerism, and the relentless pursuit of shallow pleasures, yet many remain unsatisfied. In this context, Nietzsche's philosophy offers a radical solution. His emphasis on self-overcoming, the creation of individual values, and the embrace of personal power speaks directly to our modern crisis of meaning. In an era marked by uncertainty and confusion, Nietzsche's call for us to forge our own path to become the Übermensch and to embrace life with all its chaos and beauty is a powerful antidote to the numbness of modern existence. Nietzsche's ideas aren't just theoretical. They are tools for navigating the complexities of modern life. In a world that offers no easy answers, Nietzsche provides a framework for creating meaning from within and for finding freedom through the affirmation of life itself. So, was Nietzsche right about everything? His critique of traditional values, his call for self-overcoming, and his recognition of the existential void in a godless world have proven to be not just insightful, but prophetic. Nietzsche's ideas offer us the tools to not only survive, but to thrive in a world that offers no easy answers. By embracing Nietzsche's philosophy, we're invited to challenge ourselves, to create meaning from within, to reject the comforts of societal norms, and to live with the intensity of those who know that life, full of both beauty and terror, is ours to shape. Nietzsche didn't just predict the collapse of the old order, he embraced it. And perhaps in doing so, he showed us the only true path to freedom.